She thought he was just a drifter cowboy, but he owned half the state and hadn't loved in years. The wind carried the smell of dust and gasoline that morning, wrapping itself around the red truck parked at the edge of a long, lonely Texas road. The horizon shimmered under the heat, and the world felt like it had stopped moving, until she saw him. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, walking through the haze like a ghost of the Old West. His denim shirt was faded, sleeves rolled up, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing eyes that looked like they had seen too much of life, and lost too much of it too. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in love that finds you when you least expect it, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. It helps us tell more stories that touch the heart. Her name was Clara, a 27-year-old mechanic who'd grown up fixing engines instead of playing with dolls. Her father used to say she had oil for blood and a heart that refused to quit, but after he passed 2 years ago, even that heart had grown quieter. The little auto shop they'd built together barely survived now. Customers were scarce, the bills were many, and her dreams of expanding the business were fading like the paint on her truck. That morning, when the red Ford broke down on her way back from a job in the desert, Clara wasn't expecting help. The nearest town was 20 miles behind her, and the sun was already merciless. She kicked the tire, cursed under her breath, and pulled her wrench from the back seat. That's when she heard boots crunching against the gravel. He stopped a few feet away, dust rising around him. His voice was deep, slow, almost reluctant. "Truck trouble." Clara turned, wiping sweat from her forehead. What gave it away? The smoke or the cussing? He smiled faintly, like someone who hadn't done that in a long time. Both. He offered to help, but Clara, stubborn and proud, refused at first. She wasn't the kind of woman who liked strangers touching her tools, or her truck. Still, when the radiator hissed louder than her confidence, she sighed and handed him the wrench. For the next 20 minutes, they worked side by side in silence. The only sounds were the clink of metal, the buzz of cicadas, and the distant cry of a hawk overhead. He didn't talk much, but there was something calm, almost magnetic, about him. The kind of peace that only comes from a man who has lost everything once and learned not to expect much from the world anymore. When the engine finally coughed back to life, Clara grinned for the first time in days. "Not bad for a drifter cowboy," she teased. He tilted his hat. "Name's Luke," he said simply, before walking back toward his horse. Yes, an actual horse, tied near a lone tree. She watched him go, curious. No truck, no bag, no phone. Just a man and a saddlebag in the middle of nowhere. 2 days later, Clara saw him again. This time, he walked into her shop, quiet as before, holding an old carburetor. "Heard you're the best mechanic around," he said, setting it on her workbench. She laughed. "Who told you that?" "An old ranch hand near Silver Creek. Said you don't just fix engines, you bring 'em back to life." There was something poetic about the way he said it, and Clara couldn't help but notice how his eyes softened when he looked around her shop, at the pictures of her dad, the dusty trophies from old county fairs, the hand-painted sign that read Claris Auto and Repair. Over the next few weeks, Luke became a regular visitor. He'd show up at odd hours, sometimes with a part that needed fixing, sometimes just to sit quietly on the porch while she worked. He never spoke much about himself, but Clara started to notice small things. His hands were rough, but his watch was worth more than her entire truck. His boots were worn, but his manners were polished. He always paid in cash, crisp bills that smelled new. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the world in gold, she found him staring at the horizon, lost in thought. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked, breaking the silence. He took a deep breath. "I've left too many places already. Now I'm just trying to find one that feels like home." That line stayed with her long after he rode away. What Clara didn't know was that Luke wasn't just a drifter. He was Luke Harrington, the heir to one of the largest ranching empires in the state, Harrington Holdings, land that stretched for miles across Texas, oil wells that made headlines, and a family name that came with both power and pain. He'd walked away from it all 5 years ago, after losing his wife and unborn child in a car accident. The empire had continued without him, managed by his younger brother, but Luke had never gone back. Money couldn't heal grief, and power couldn't bring peace. He wandered from town to town, doing ranch work, fixing fences, helping strangers. He didn't want to be Luke Harrington, billionaire rancher. He just wanted to be Luke, the man who could breathe again. But Clara changed that, slowly, quietly, without meaning to. She was the first person in years who looked at him and saw a man, not a name or a fortune. Weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. He started helping her around the shop, fixing engines, running errands, even cooking dinner in the little apartment above the garage. They laughed, argued, shared stories about their pasts, except his, which remained mostly a mystery. One stormy night, the truth began to slip through the cracks. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside Clara's shop, and two men in suits stepped out. They spoke to Luke in low voices she couldn't hear, but the way his jaw tightened told her enough. When they left, she confronted him. "Who were they, Luke? You said you didn't have family." He looked at her then, his eyes filled with something between guilt and sorrow. "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you who they were." She folded her arms. "Then tell me now." He hesitated. "You wouldn't believe me if I did. Try me." He finally told her everything. The ranch, the empire, the wealth he'd walked away from. He told her about the accident that had broken him, about the years he spent trying to escape his own shadow. Clara didn't speak for a long time. The rain beat against the windows, thunder rolled in the distance, and all she could think was how unfair life was, that a man with so much could still feel so empty. "You think money scares me," she said finally. "I've been broke my whole life, Luke. But what scares me is losing people. And it sounds like you've already lost enough." He looked at her then, really looked at her, as if seeing sunlight after years of darkness. From that night on, something changed. Luke stopped hiding. He started bringing pieces of his old life back. Not the luxury, but the purpose. He used his resources to help her fix the shop, buy new equipment, pay off her debts. He didn't do it to impress her. He did it because he finally believed in something again. For the first time in years, Luke smiled easily. He taught Clara how to ride horses. She taught him how to fix engines. Together they built something neither of them had in a long time: hope. But the world wasn't done testing them. One day, Luke's brother came to town, furious. He accused Luke of abandoning the family business and tarnishing the Harrington name by living like a nobody. The argument got heated, and Clara overheard it all. When Luke shouted that he'd rather be a nobody with peace than a rich man with a hollow heart, she finally understood the depth of his pain. Later that night, she found him sitting by the truck they'd fixed together months ago, staring into the dark. "You know," she said softly, "when I first saw you, I thought you were just a drifter cowboy." He smiled faintly. "You weren't wrong. But now I know you're a man who owns half the state, and still manages to have the kindest soul I've ever met." He looked at her then, his eyes glistening under the moonlight. "I may own half the state, Clara. But the only thing I've ever wanted to own again is my heart. And somehow, you already have it." Tears welled in her eyes as he took her hand. The night wind whispered through the trees, and for the first time in years, Luke Harrington wasn't running anymore. Months later, they turned the old shop into something bigger: Harrington and Clara Motors, a community garage that offered free repairs to struggling families. The ranch hands from Luke's old estate often came by to help, and slowly, Luke began rebuilding bridges he thought were burned forever. He never flaunted his wealth. Instead, he used it quietly, with purpose. Clara reminded him that money could fix engines, but love fixed people. And every evening, when the sun dipped behind the hills and the world turned golden, Luke would watch Clara work. her hair messy, hands stained with grease, eyes bright with determination, and think to himself that maybe love wasn't something you found once in a lifetime. Maybe it was something you built, one act of kindness at a time. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like this, stories of redemption, second chances, and unexpected love. Before you go, comment below. True love doesn't care about money, it cares about heart. Because sometimes, the richest man in the world is the one who finally learns how to love again. The end, heart.